Good evening, good evening, good evening. I hope I've caught you doing incredibly well indeed. Thank you very much for your company as ever and joining me for this Reasoned Live. Now, if you haven't done so already, please do hit that subscribe button and the little like as well, because it helps out this small channel that we run ourselves. Chloe Dobbs, of course, still doing fantastic work for this new, well, relatively new compared to the Media Beasts channel. My friends, I've got a lot to talk about tonight. I think you all know the world is going to hell in a handcart. But also, Sir Keir Starmer has revealed whose side he's really on. It ain't your side. It ain't my side. I think we know where I'm going with this. 1 week after the Gorton and Denton by-election, in which independent verifiers, not us in Reform, I was there by the way, not us in Reform, but actually independent verifiers, say that the Gorton and Denton by-election had overwhelming numbers of family votes, of men going in to mark the ballots of individuals. And of course, the postal vote scandal, which Nigel Farage has called out overwhelmingly and said it needs reform. I agree with him. You should only be able to get a postal vote if you have a circumstance which warrant it, i.e. you have some form of disability or you're so ill you cannot get out, because it's been played like a fiddle. The whole system's been played like a fiddle. So, as I say, we're in this moment, right, where the Iranian beast, with all of its proxies throughout the Middle East and elsewhere, is finding itself on the back foot, where actually it has finally been met with the challenge that I believe it warrants. Now, in the taken action, President Donald J. Trump says he's been let down by Keir Starmer, who he says is not Sir Winston Churchill. I mean, no shit, Sherlock. You know, I think actually every single one of you would be screaming that into your telly sets, saying, I think we knew that many years ago now, that actually this man is a globalist puppet who actually serves his own interests, those of international quangos, and not those of the rank and file working class British public. And I think it's proven, is it not, in this? So, Donald Trump said earlier, this was last night, that it was possible that Starmer was pandering to certain voters, i.e. Muslim voters. And 12 hours later, here he was in Westminster Hall, that august hall of our history, the hall of monarchs, the hall of parliamentary democracy, the cradle of democracy, the hall in which Her Majesty the Queen, our late Queen's body, lay in rest. And Keir Starmer stands up to have iftar, a Ramadan buffet with Muslim groups, to say, don't worry, we're not getting involved in Iran. We'll do exactly what you want. And this is a week after the Gorton and Denton by-election, in which we saw the fruits of religious sectarianism coming to fore in Britain. And this is what he says.
In Palestine and Israel. But on Iran, I want to make clear the UK was not involved in the offensive strikes of the US and Israel, and that remains the case.
He then met with the dodgy fellas included in this video that I posted this morning. He meets with the ambassador of Palestine, of course, himself, a pretty big fan of what happened on October 7th. And the High Commissioner of Pakistan. I mean, my God, he doesn't represent us, does he? At all. And this is what Donald J. Trump had said.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him.
Pecos Islands.
3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with. By the way, I'm not happy with the...
You can say that again.
UK.
I mean, Sir Winston Churchill used to drink like a fish, but my God, he used to perform a hell of a lot better and more competently than this spineless cretin is in number 10 Downing Street today.
That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it, for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him.
Chagos Islands again made us look like weak prats on the world stage, paying billions over to actually the Mauritians, an ally of the Chinese, and we'll get on to a bit more of that later on, because actually the Labour MP Joni Reid's partner David Taylor has been arrested on suspicion of spying for China, and I said, oh dear, and are we still going ahead with China's mega spy base in London? And the answer to that will be an overwhelming yes. Of course we are, because Sir Keir Starmer is not representing the national interest. He's representing his own interests. In the name of human rights and international cooperation, we're literally allowing the Chinese communist beast to come and get its feet underneath our table and be able to feast away on national infrastructure to spy on us, as they are alleged to have done when it comes to a politician's husband. And we're still going ahead with allowing them to build this mega spy base. Insanity. Insanity. And we go to China with a begging bowl saying, please, sir, can I have some more? Some more trade that destroys British industry. Please, sir. Pathetic. So I go back to, and Chris Rose said, Keir Starmer should be prescribing the Revolutionary Guard, Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and the Muslim Brotherhood. Instead, he's at the Westminster Hall iftar, telling the Muslim community that Britain played no role attacking the Iranian regime, despite the fact, of course, that an RAF base in Cyprus was hit by Iranian drones. And we are allegedly sending a deterrent in the form of one of our fleet that won't get there until Tuesday. I mean, see you next Tuesday. If you know what that means, you'll know where I'm going with that one. But ultimately, no use to man nor beast. Cyprus could be wiped off the face of the earth by then. Man is a total incompetent clown. GB News posted, Keir Starmer received standing ovation from Muslims at the big iftar event after making peace pledge for Palestine. Why is he still wittering on about Palestine? How is that relevant to this, to what's going on right now? With that Cypriot bases being attacked, with our British serving personnel, and actually a lot of expats too, by the way. And he wants to talk about Palestine. Cares more about Gaza than he does Glasgow. Cares more about Gaza than he does Greenwich. The man is a globalist puppet. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll continue saying it. This all proves it and shows it. Do you feel safe? Do you feel secure in the knowledge that Keir Starmer would be willing to press the nuclear button if one was fired at the United Kingdom? I don't have that confidence. And I think he must be the first Prime Minister. We haven't faced this threat since the prospect of Jeremy Corbyn. Can't trust Labour. Samantha said, tonight, while our people are being murdered on the streets, our Prime Minister was at an iftar event where Allahu Akbar was blared out. Keir Starmer stood there and told the Muslim community that they are the modern face of Britain and the faith that bonds Britain. Not to mention reaffirming he had nothing to do with the Iranian bombing to appease his crowd, including Palestinian ambassador Hussam Zomlot. This is where his priorities lie, and I agree with that sentiment. And this was him, the video that he put out to try and make it look like he's giving a show of strength.
Emmanuel, Friedrich, really good to hear from you.
I think we are all concerned about what could happen within the next couple of hours or days.
We weren't involved, as we've made clear. in the strike.
Has to reiterate that. The Americans didn't even feel comfortable telling you it was going to happen because they know where your loyalties lie. They know where the loyalties of Britain lies. Imagine telling Sir Winston Churchill that our loyalties would end up lying with a Persian state that has been taken over by Islamists who have exiled the Shah. He would have said, "Are you flipping mad?" And he'd be right to do so.
Although we are operating defensively in the region in relation to our assets and liabilities and allies. I think
we're not, though, are we? There's nothing defending Cyprus.
Prime Minister, how are you?
Hi. How are you? These are very big decisions. I want to hear your views, helping with the principles that we should apply as we go forward from here.
It's not joining the offensive.
Yeah.
This is about collective self-defence of regional allies and British civilians are now at risk.
Good.
You are going to be put through to the office of the President of Cyprus.
We're deploying a Type 45 air defence destroyer to help defend Cyprus. Brilliant. Thanks, Nicholas. Bye now. Bye.
On Tuesday next week. This doesn't make him look weak, strong even. It makes him look weak and it makes him look spineless. So another story that really caught my eye was the size of the benefits bill and how it's going up. I was thinking about this in the context of defence, right? We spend £62 billion on defence. Now, I want to show you how much that we actually spend on, and by the way, this is the size of the Navy right now. This is the entire fleet, right? It used to be said that Britain never, never, never shall be slaves, rule Britannia. I mean, looking at that fleet, we can't even rule Dover. Never mind rule Britannia, rule the waves. That's what we're working with right now. That's the size of the fleet. That £62 billion package that we hand over in defence. That's what it's getting us as far as the Navy's concerned. Someone's commented saying 40% of those ships can't deploy. And the benefits bill, welfare spending is set to rise by £18 billion this year to £330 billion before hitting an eye-watering £407 billion in 2030-2031. And Jack Elsom says gulp. He's the political editor of The Sun. And on that point, Tom Harwood, he says, "I don't think the average Brit realises this year that we are spending the equivalent of the entire NASA space budget on benefits uplifts alone. So the extra £18 billion in welfare spending is tantamount to the annual budget of NASA, which is $24.4 billion US, bringing our annual spend to around 18 NASAs. By the end of the decade, it's set to reach 22 NASAs per year. That's Britain's welfare bill. And if you look when it comes to foreigners, the top nationalities claiming asylum: Pakistan, Eritrea, Iran, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Sudan, India, Somalia, Nigeria, Vietnam. And they're the top nationalities claiming asylum by December 2025. And these are the people that are coming here and that are being fed this diet of benefits. And look at this photo here. Look at this photo. I mean, how disgraceful is that? The scene of a young child sticking up their fingers like that. Refugees? They don't look especially grateful, do they? And Steve Hawke says, and this is a crucial point, this is bigger than the entire GDP of Norway. The entire GDP on Britain's benefits bill. It is preposterous. It is absolutely insane. And one of the Labour ministers, utterly craven, as you can expect, had this to say, this utterly cretinous reply. Have a listen. It really boiled my piddle.
We've been clear that welfare spending needs to be
made sure it keeps under control.
Sorry, you can't
we know
say
that-
reduced. You were about to say reduced there, and you stopped yourself.
Well,
do you
no,
want to
because-
cut? Do you want to cut welfare
No,
spending?
Can I just be clear on this? Because there are different components of welfare spending, and we know that it's gotten out of control in recent years in certain parts of the welfare system. So we know, for instance, that the number of young people who are long-term
Immigration.
unemployed has gone up substantially. We know that under the previous government, the number of young people who are economically inactive.
James Murray,
hit
I'm
record levels.
asking about what's happening under your administration. Welfare spending is going to rise to £407 billion in 2030, 7 times the defence budget. Do you want to cut spending on welfare and benefits?
Look, we've already begun to reduce fraud and error in welfare. We've already begun to change the welfare system when it comes to universal credit to make sure it's balanced towards getting people back into work. We've already started to take those steps to control welfare spending. But we're not done in terms of
Do
welfare.
you want to cut the welfare budget? Is £407 billion acceptable to you?
Look, we're not
Answer
done
the question.
in terms of our reforming of the welfare system.
Why can't you say that you want to reduce it? We are talking today about a very serious attack on British sovereign territory. We are facing the wrath of our closest ally. You have senior military officials, including the Air Chief Marshal, saying that the country is not able to fund its own military capacity. And you can't say that £407 billion spent on welfare is too much.
Look, there are two different questions you're asking there. On the one hand, what is crucial for me is that we get people into work wherever they are able to work. We need to make sure, particularly young people who are long-term unemployed and who are not close to the job market, that we help them get into work. And that's the focus of what we're doing as a government, is to make sure that people do not get stuck unemployed, do not get written off from the job market, and we help them back into work. You also mentioned defence investment, and we are investing a sustained increase that we have not seen since the Cold War.
Is the Air Chief Marshal wrong?
Well, look, the amount of investment that we're putting into the defence of our nation is at a level not seen since the Cold War. It's increasing to 2.6% of GDP next year. The Conservatives, talked about 2.5%, but never had a plan to
James
fund
Murray,
it.
we've run out of time, but I'm just going to give you one more opportunity. Is £407 billion spent on welfare in this country acceptable? Does this Labour government want to cut spending on welfare? Yes or no?
This government wants to get people into work, and that means getting people off welfare and into jobs.
I think people will have taken that answer very clearly.
Yeah, you can damn right bet your bottom dollar I did. And the answer I took away from that was, we're more than happy for the world to come to Britain and continue giving them billions of pounds in putting them up in hotels, in private rented accommodation, next door to you, next door to single women, next door to God only knows who. We're more than happy to see the young people unemployed and living life on benefits. That's why we keep hiking the minimum wage, meaning that businesses don't take on young people without experience. We don't allow young people to get jobs because we're hiking national insurance, making it absolutely mind-numbingly high for a burden for businesses to hire young people. We'll also hike taxes in other areas too, meaning that actually it pays to be on benefits. It doesn't pay to be in work, meaning that there are some people in Britain who look at the fact that they can be written off for saying they've got anxiety or whatever else and not have to work. And that number has gone up by millions of people, that is, not the cost, that's billions. Millions of people saying they can't work. This is unsustainable. More than the entire GDP of Norway, an asset-rich nation. More than the entire defence budget several times over. The benefits bill is actually bankrupting Britain. We need to get real on that. And we are the only party that's actually saying it. The Tories are the ones that changed the rules to allow personal independence payments for mental health issues, which have skyrocketed. Since COVID, the number of people who decided that actually it was quite nice being paid to sit on your arse, that's gone through the roof. We cannot go on like this. Our priorities need to be getting our people into work, not actually funding those who come here unwelcome, unasked, or those who can't be bothered to work. Tough. We can't go on like this. We simply cannot. It is suicidal empathy. On immigration, on benefits, on a whole slew of other issues too. Suicidal empathy. So, another benefits-related story was when Ed Davey stood up and said that those expats who have gone to Dubai to not be taxed out of their minds by Rachel Thieves, the accountant who worked behind a call centre desk and said that she was an economist. But anyway, Ed Davey had this to say.
We rightly expect our brave armed forces to protect British citizens around the world in crises like this. But that includes tax exiles like Isabel Oakeshott and washed-up old footballers who mock ordinary people who stay in the UK.
Isabel Oakeshott, by the way, went out to Dubai, and she's told me this, because she feels unsafe in Britain. Do you blame her? I'm not sure many do. The UAE takes Islamic extremism more seriously than Britain does. Yeah, it's got tax benefits, but there's a safety aspect as well.
UK and pay our taxes here. So as we protect them, does the Prime Minister agree it is only right for tax exiles to start paying taxes to fund our armed forces just like the rest of us do?
Why is now the moment to use people who are genuinely fearful as some sort of political football? And then there's the argument itself, which I find to be one of the most ridiculous, spurious, nonsensical displays from an apparently serious politician that I think I've seen in a long while. The argument seeming to be they've not paid in, so they shouldn't get anything. Well, fine. So where are the Lib Dems on NHS treatments for foreign nationals? Where are they in criticising the money given to and spent on asylum claimants who haven't paid in? I didn't hear the Lib Dems go nuts about the cost of bringing Afghans on flights out of Afghanistan. I didn't hear Ed Davey asking whether they had to pay their fair share. Their argument is these Dubai Brits, with their turkey teeth and their Swiss bank accounts, don't deserve these flights because they haven't paid in. Well, apply that to all manner of individuals who come from overseas into this country, contribute nothing, have lots spent on them, and who the Lib Dems are apparently fine with.
Exactly. I couldn't have put it better myself. That was Tom Swarbrick there from the LBC. And I agree. I agree with all of that. The Lib Dems, they've actually exposed themselves on this argument entirely. If you don't pay in, you can't take out. Well, let's apply that to the HMOs that you don't mind popping up in council estates in County Durham and all these other things. The hypocrisy is utterly mind-blowing. Ed Davey is a complete and utter clown. Honestly, a court jester would blush at the amateur dramatics of this theatrical ponce. And the Andrew Neil had this to say, formerly of the BBC. This is just populist drivel. Expats don't generally pay British tax, whether they're in low-tax territories like Dubai or high-tax territories like New York. So this logic, all expats should pay for their evacuation. But here's the rub, they do. In most cases, British nationals, including expats, are expected to cover or contribute to the costs of evacuation or assisted repatriation arranged by the UK government rather than receiving it entirely for free. Good Morning Britain should be interrogating Ed Davey's know-nothing nonsense, not giving it a free ride. I agree. And actually, it was proven in this tweet by Neil Johnson. Work with airlines, airports and travel companies and highlight their advice and services. In exceptional circumstances where commercial flights are not available, we may provide additional transport, such as charter flight, where you may be charged an appropriate fee for seats. If you cannot pay in advance, we will provide you a short-term loan that must be paid back later. So we do charge people. Are we saying that we don't allow British nationals in because they don't want to pay for the Lib Dem foreigners? This is ridiculous. He is a clown. And then, I mean, there's a whole slew. I could go on and on and on all day today. I really, really could. And the fact of the matter is, that on so many of these issues, I think the political class are just showing themselves to be completely and utterly removed and divorced from reality. So Zach Polanski was defending Mothin Ali, this man here on the right, who said that after October 7th, it was good to see white settlers having what happened to them happen to them. He also shouted Allahu Akbar when he was elected as a Leeds councillor. And now, after the death of the Ayatollah, he gathered in London with a load of pro-Iranian shills to decry what had happened. So, Zach Polanski, the Plonker Polanski, the tit whisperer of the Green Party, said there's nothing the establishment is more scared of than a calm, kind, thoughtful gardener who happens to be a Muslim man in politics. We'll stand together. Solidarity, Mothin Ali. Solidarity, Ayatollah. You cretin. You cretin. And then the Labour leader, Anna Sarwar, of the Scottish Labour Party, was forced to condemn his own dad for mourning the death of Ayatollah Khamenei. And we're meant to believe that there has been a massive, obvious, overwhelming multicultural success story.
A tribute on social media to the Ayatollah, a man who has killed thousands of civilians. Do you agree with him, and have you spoken to him about it?
He's wrong. My view is that the leader of Iran has been a brutal dictator that has obviously done many bad things to his own citizens, has threatened many of his neighbours, has funded countless attacks, has been behind several threats to our own country here, and I think there'll be lots of people who have very strong views about what he was like as an individual or what that regime was like. In terms of the broader situation, look, this is a really dangerous time. It's a dangerous time, of course, for Iran itself, but it's a dangerous time for the entire region. And what needs to happen really quickly is a de-escalation, an end to the war. That means no nuclear capability for Iran, of course, but
that's what they're doing.
Peace and security for all the nations across the broader Middle East, and that has to be our urgent priority.
Keir Starmer has allowed the US Army to use the UK's base in Cyprus. Are you concerned that the UK will be dragged into this war, given that it's already been attacked?
So I think it's right that the UK wasn't involved in any offensive action. And the reason why I stress that is, whilst we all have strong views about the Iranian regime, I think there is a nervousness about what the actions and the aftermath of the actions will mean for many of the neighbours, many of whom were not even involved in the offensive action. Take the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, that are now seeing missile fire as a result. And so we do have a duty to make sure we are protecting our allies, protecting our infrastructure, and protecting our citizens in these nations and beyond. So supporting defensive operations, I think, is the right thing to do, but it's also right that the UK is not part of any offensive action.
And going back to the Green Party with Mothin Ali, you know, I had said after Zach Polanski tweeted that, I said, this is the fella that said this after a massacre and rapes. Lovely fella. Councillor who hailed the end of white settler colonialism on October 7th, elected Green Deputy Leader Mothin Ali supported the right of Indigenous people to fight back in the wake of the attack and dedicated his local election victory to the people of Gaza, not to the people of Leeds. Multicultural success story. Pull the other one. Pull the other one. I ain't buying it. I ain't accepting it. And here he is, tweeted out by Alex Cox.
Israel has launched one of the biggest attacks against the civilian population that we've seen for many years. Now, they're going to use the pretext of the fight back by Hamas fighters, or supposedly Hamas fighters, this morning. Now, remember the situation in Palestine, and especially the situation in Gaza. It's an open-air prison. It's the biggest concentration camp the world has ever seen.
No, it's not.
Millions of people have been rounded up into a tiny area. They're living on top of each other. They've been forced to live off scraps that
if they're living on top of each other, how has there been a genocide? if they're having babies and repopulating.
National community sometimes donates to them. Now, the dignity of the indigenous population, we haven't seen being stripped away in this way, just like the Europeans did to the Native Americans or...
Bollocks. The Jews, by the way, you can go back, you can see the history, archaeology, that actually suggests that the Jews have been there for thousands of years.
How the Europeans did throughout the colonies. Remember, Israel is a colonial, settler colonial occupier. It's been trying to erase the history and trying to erase the legitimacy
Hamas
of
does
a
that.
native
Hamas
population.
does that.
Every single person, every single people have a right to fight back. Every single people have a right to live free of occupiers. That includes people who are brown, that includes people who are Muslim, that includes people who are Arab. Just because they're brown and Arab doesn't mean that...
It's a dangerous argument to make for a man who, you know, is a, second generation immigrant to this country. I'm not suggesting for a second that I would advocate anything like he is suggesting is acceptable in Israel. Of course I don't. But what a dangerous argument to make.
That they don't have a right to fight back. You saw the Western support for Ukraine when they fought back against Russia. Palestinians have equal right, if not more. They've been under occupation for over 70 years. They've literally been wiped off the map. They talk about wiping Israel off the map. They've wiped Palestine off the map. They've put millions of people into refugee camps. They use the pretext of rockets and they use the pretext of people resisting an occupier to further destroy a civilian population and any prospect of a Palestinian home state.
Bollocks. A load of bollocks. But this is the crop of politicians that we're getting coming through. And by the way, you know, on Anasawa, I'm not saying the sins of the father naturally follow to the sins of into being the sins of the child. I'm not saying that for 1 second. You know, my own father is a bit of a someone I wouldn't seek to emulate. But it suggests, doesn't it, that there is an uncomfortable reality on some of Britain's most recent arrivals. I'm not saying that Anasawa isn't British. He was born he obviously has a very Scottish accent. But I am suggesting that there will be a hell of a lot of people who agree with Anasawa's dad. And that's deeply troubling. Deeply, deeply troubling. Rachel Reeves, in response to Iran, said that she would meet with leaders from the North Sea oil and gas industry to discuss the implications they face due to the Middle East conflict. And I said, well, any leader worth her salt would have said, drill, baby, drill. But of course she hasn't. She said, shrill, baby, shrill. And she stood up there celebrating 1% of economic growth. Ooh, inflation's running at over 3%. Ooh. We're not growing. We ain't growing. The benefits bill's growing. That's the only thing Labour's actually managing to grow, by the way. And then yesterday, also in Scotland, counter-terror police in Birmingham were seen after an alleged knife incident at a school. And a day after, a school was placed in lockdown in Scotland. It's all kicking off in this country. And I said to look at this. The SNP, I welcome refugees. Virtue signalling Pillock, leader of the SNP. And then this, 2 stabbed by knifemen in Edinburgh as schools are locked down by this foreigner who ought to be deported, but undoubtedly won't be. They are spineless and they fill me with absolute dread and nothing but contempt, to be perfectly honest with you. And then finally, folks, you know, you'll know about this. And you might disagree with me on this, right? That the Labour government, one of its policies is to put through assisted dying. Now, assisted dying is struggling to get through because of the House of Lords. So the bill is struggling to pass through Parliament to receive royal assent. Now, I've always had deep foreboding and reservations about the whole notion of assisted suicide. And Canada, Liberal Canada under Justin Trudeau, now Mark Carney, globalist formerly of the Bank of England, I think they're a telltale sign of why I was right to have reservations. And that's not to say my heart doesn't go out to those in unimaginable suffering. But have a listen.
Amir Farsood has applied for medically assisted dying, known as MAID. He lives in constant agony due to a back injury, but has started the process for end of life because his rooming house is up for sale and he can't find anywhere else to live that he can afford. He barely survives on Ontario disability support payments, which are just over $1,200 a month. He doesn't want to die, but being homeless is not an option.
I know in my present health condition I wouldn't survive it anyway.
Farsood meets the criteria for MAID, physical suffering due to disability that cannot be relieved. His doctor, who knows Farsood's real reason for MAID is his fear of being homeless, signed off on the application in August. Farsood needs a second to do the same. There's a 90-day waiting period. He believes he could potentially access MAID in about a month.
I don't wish to be dead, even with the pain, even with the meds. I still want to be here.
To say that you need to off someone, you need to basically have someone commit suicide in order to actually them to get out of a life of poverty. It has such evil consequences. How many people will be told that they have to protect the NHS and release demand on services by killing themselves? I find it deeply, deeply troubling. And there are so many stories like this one, too, in which the one guy, Adam Coleman, says, I used to be one of those people who thought people were crazy when they brought up the slippery slope argument for ideas like assisted suicide. Boy, has Canada proved me wrong. I couldn't agree more. And Canada is now euthanizing 2 times more people per year than dogs. That's 16,425 people who've been killed by the state versus 7,644 dogs. Canada's to soon mark the 100,000th medically assisted die and death. The country will become the first to reach 6 figures. I don't see this as a sign of progress. I see this as a sign of decline into a unchecked liberalism that actually will lead to a lot of unnecessary death that ought not ever happen, and that no actual tolerant, open democracy ought to justify or accept. So I don't want it to come to Britain. I'm sorry if some people disagree with me on this. I get the strength of feeling out there, but I think Canada is a massive, glaring alarm bell of what happens if this hyper-liberalism goes off unchecked. I'm worried about it. I fear for it. And that, my friends, is all I've got time for tonight, because I'm going out to try and drum up some Reform candidates to stand in the northeast of England in the upcoming May local elections. Reform, in my opinion, we're the only game in town. The only ones that can do it, can actually turn the tide, can save Britain. And that's why I'm committed to the party. I gave up a lot to do this. And I'm hopeful that we'll find other people who equally agree with me and wish to put themselves forward to serve their communities, to serve their country, and help us on the journey to the next general election, in which we will be the only ones on the ballot who can turn the tide. Anyway, on that bombshell, my friends, I wish you a very good night, and God bless. And please like and subscribe if you haven't already. We are a small channel. We need all the help and support we can get. It costs you nought, but it does help. Thank you very much. Good night.